How's it going, guys? Nerdy Gamer here. So this is going to be kind of like a part 2 to the last video that I did on games that I would like to see get remastered or remake. This time I'm going to be adding 10 instead of 15. Figure this time it actually would add more games, considering that there's actually games that I wouldn't mind actually getting remasters or remakes. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do that. Now obviously from the last video that I had from that specific topic, there were games that already got ports and luckily had remakes, which was really nice. But I figured this time I would actually add games that don't exactly have remakes or remasters, and I actually would not mind get to see them have one day. So, without further ado, let's get started with the countdown. Number 10, Godzilla Save the Earth. Out of all the Godzilla games that came out back in the day, Save the Earth was probably the best one, I would probably say. Out of all the ones I played, this is probably the best one. All my friends really enjoyed this game back then, and we had a blast just playing all the characters and just basically kind of beat the shit out of each other as all the Godzilla characters. Now obviously Godzilla had a record of different games back in the day that I actually played, which is Destroy All Monsters, Monsters Unleashed, and of course that piece of shit PS4 game that came out a few years ago. But in terms of Save the Earth, this is a game that I probably recommend anybody who's really into Godzilla would really like this game. Even though it doesn't really hold up as much as it is now, because of the technical issues and the way the game is, but the game is still a lot of fun, even if you like Godzilla. So this game, I would like to see get a remaster, especially when Godzilla is now kind of popular in terms of the new movies now, and there's a lot of more Godzilla merch. So honestly, I wouldn't mind if this game got a remake or maybe a remaster, because this is probably one of the best Godzilla games I've actually played, especially back in the day on the PS2. Number 9. Disney Extreme Skating Adventure. Extreme Skate Adventure was a game that, I gotta say, back in the day, I was really into as a kid. Mainly because I was really into a lot of the Tony Hawk games, and back then, skateboarding games was really one of my favorite games to play, especially when I was really into Tony Hawk. And obviously, I was really into Disney, so that also could have helped as well. But back then, I remember renting this game from Blockbuster at least about 10 or 20 times. And back then, I could not stop playing this game. I literally beat this game like 100%, just getting all the achievements, unlocking all the characters, and pretty much beating all the areas and all the achievements. This game back then was just a lot of fun. Now obviously people would think, yeah, well why would you want this game to actually get a remake? Well, the reason I would like to get this game to have a remake or remaster is mainly because, well, I had a lot of fun memories with it, and the fact I wouldn't mind going back and playing it for just nostalgic sake. Now obviously, if they actually got a remaster, I wouldn't mind if Activision or whoever would develop it would actually put a lot of more of the Disney IPs. That was kind of one of the only things that I was disappointed with the game, was there was only like 3 different IPs from Disney. Like there was Toy Story, Lion King, and Tarzan. Not that those are terrible by any means, because I love all 3 of them. It's just I wouldn't mind if they added all the IPs from other of Disney's IP. That would have been awesome. But obviously Activision at the time, they could only do 3, so it kind of makes sense. But honestly, if this game ever got a remake or remaster, I wouldn't mind actually going back and playing it again, and maybe perhaps like complete all the achievements, because honestly this game is really good. Number 8, Maximum Carnage. Maximum Carnage was a great game to play back in the day, especially for the fact that Spider-Man had some really excellent games back in the 90s. There was even some games that came out in the early 2000s as well that was really good, including Spider-Man 2, the original, and of course the one on PS1. Those are all great Spider-Man games, and obviously Spider-Man has come a long way when it comes to the newer games, but obviously when it comes to the originals, Maximum Carnage is probably his best game yet. This was a game I would say I played a lot of hours with, whether if I'm at a relative's house or whether I'm at a convention where somebody would play it at a table. This game was just amazing. When it comes to Marvel games, this is probably the best one I would play. The fact you can actually play as either Spider-Man, you go up against a lot of Carnage, you play as Venom, this game is just amazing. I honestly would not mind if this game got a remake, especially when a lot of other Marvel games, like the original X-Men games, is definitely due for that as well. But ever since like Marvel started like remaking a lot of their games, and ever since Acclaim, who actually did this game, remade a lot of like the Jurassic Park games and a lot of the other games they've actually made back in the day to get remasters, this game I feel like is due for one, especially when this is just a classic game to play. And obviously it's high demand for a remake. So honestly, I definitely would like to see this game come back and actually be restored and actually be like as great as what it was in the original. This is a great game. Number 7, Eggmania Extreme Madness. Eggmania was surprisingly a really fun puzzle game back in the day. Even if it's for a Tetris clone, it's definitely a really good game. It was different from how Tetris was, where instead of like just normal blocks being placed in different areas, you had the characters just kind of put them in each area, and it was kind of cool how they did it. I remember looking at the box art and being like extremely, not just like unappealed by it, but it just seemed Like, it was just going to be a really quirky game, and sure enough, it was. It was actually a lot of fun to play, and I remember playing it with friends, and at some point, I actually played it in competitions at conventions. This game is actually a lot of fun to play, especially if you have friends, or just really like playing Tetris. Now, for me, I would like this game to actually get a remake, or possibly get a remaster, even though this game kind of floated over the radar over the years. I don't really hear anybody really talk about this game, or better yet, even know that it's actually out or even existed. I wouldn't mind if this game actually came out, got a remake, and perhaps maybe get people interested in getting into this game. Who knows? Me personally, I think this game really deserves a remake, and I wouldn't mind going back and actually doing some puzzle challenges again. Number 6. Twisted Metal Small Brawl. The Twisted Metal games back on the original PlayStation were a lot of fun back in the day. I remember me and my cousin would just play the shit of all the Twisted Metal games, but in terms of all the original games that I love, it was a toss-up between whether I liked the 4th game or Small Brawl to get a remake. Well, the 4th game I wouldn't mind getting a remake, but I prefer Small Brawl over the 4th game. Not to say the 4th game is terrible by any means, but Small Brawl, in my opinion, was just a lot of fun. To me, I probably put more hours into Small Brawl by unlocking all the characters, did the story mode, and just had a lot of fun playing it with my cousin. We had a blast playing the multiplayer mode with just playing all the carts, shooting the shit at each other multiplayer. It was just a lot of fun to play. To be honest with you, since Twisted Metal is now coming back to light with the new TV show that just came out, which I'm not the biggest fan of the TV show, by the way, but other than that, it's fine. But when it comes to the franchise as a whole, I think Sony definitely needs to bring it back, since now that they brought it back for that new series. But I feel like Sony just needs to kind of expand it and just make more games. I was disappointed with the PS3 game, and that game was just dog shit compared to the original games. But in terms of remake, I would love to see Small Brawl get a remaster, and possibly if Sony decides to bring more games back into Twisted Metal, that'd be great as well. But I think when it comes to games that definitely deserve a remake, Small Brawl definitely does. It's just a great game as a whole, and is just the best game out of the franchise. Number 5, The Simpsons arcade game. The Simpsons arcade game is probably one of my favorite games to play in any arcade in general. This was a game I unfortunately never grew up with, but I actually got to play years later when I went to a local anime convention who actually had the old cabinet. This game I know is rare to find, especially in any cabinet that you find it anywhere, but when it comes to actually trying the game out, I completely fell in love with it. This game is just awesome. It's developed by Konami, who actually did the original Ninja Turtles arcade game, which I gotta say is one of my favorite games as well. But when it comes to this game, it definitely is a lot of fun. And it's kind of a shame that Konami actually didn't have the ports for it when it was on Xbox Live and on PSN. Unfortunately, due to the rights and everything, they couldn't actually keep the game on, which is really weird. But it would be awesome if this game actually got a remake, or actually got ported again, or maybe actually like remade and actually made the game 10 times better than what the original is. But I would love to see it actually get revamped and maybe enhance graphics, and maybe even make it just as well as they did before. Or hell, even actually make it the way that Konami did it with the Ninja Turtles games, where they actually made it the Cowabunga collection. They could always do that, where instead of they can actually add the Simpsons game, and they can add all the original games that was on the handheld titles and everything, they could do that as well. But I feel like this game definitely deserves a remake, because it is probably one of the best arcade games that I've ever played. Now obviously people are going to say, well, why would this game get a remake when they already had a 1-up machine for it? Well, here's the thing though. The 1-up machine is more money than the actual cabinet itself. So to me, I don't think anybody's going to really buy the actual 1-up cabinet and spend $700 when they could just actually play the game on like PSN, or they can play it on Xbox, you know, now that Xbox has the Game Pass. Like now they could just put it on there, or hell, even put it on Steam. So honestly, to me, there's so much availability that they could do with this, and there's so much possibility that this game can have. So to be honest with you, I really would like The Simpsons to actually get an actual port, or somehow get it remastered, because this game is just awesome to play in arcades, and it's a shame that they never used to, but either way, this game is a lot of fun to play. Number 4, Wario World. I think in terms of GameCube games, Wario World is probably one of the games I would not mind if Nintendo actually made a remake of. Obviously, because Wario has had a lot of games over the years, especially with Wario Land, Shake It on the Wii, which I really liked, and obviously the WarioWare games, which is literally where Wario kind of got most of his time to shine in most of the games, except the Wario Land games. Not the biggest fan of Master of the Skies, which is a whole different topic in of itself. When it comes to Wario World, when it was on the GameCube, was a lot of fun to play. It definitely felt like it was an obscure platformer where you play as Wario, and you kind of just beat a bunch of bosses and you just collect gold. That's kind of the whole basis of Wario World itself, but this was a really fun game, and honestly, it kind of made Wario stand out as a character in this game. Now, obviously, a lot of people would think, well, why would this game get a remake? Well, the reason I would actually really like to have this game get a remake is it'd be a lot of good things that Nintendo would actually do, especially now that they're doing the whole Switch Online thing where they're doing the GameCube games. But even then, this was a game I felt that definitely needed a remake. I mean, for the longest time, it felt like Wario needed to have like a new game, and this is actually a good idea to even put it as a remake. It's kind of interesting because now Nintendo's starting to do ports of other GameCube games like Metroid Prime, Pikmin, and now recently they did Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which is awesome. That was the one game that I always wanted them to either port or always remaster, and they finally did it. But now with this, I feel like Wario World should be in the same category. Because honestly, this game is just amazing, and it's one of the best games that they've done for Wario. Number 3, Diddy Kong Racing. Diddy Kong Racing is probably one of the best car racers to play on the Nintendo 64. Obviously, I would probably compare it to Mario Kart 64 and how good that game is, but this game as a whole is probably in the same length of how I view that game compared to how the multiplayer is. This game is probably the best multiplayer that you could possibly imagine. When it comes to the character roster, where you can play as Banjo, Conker, and obviously you can play as Diddy. This game, when it comes to the multiplayer, is just awesome. The story mode is also pretty good too. The only thing that it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass where you have to do the same thing over again. It can get a little bit repetitive in the story mode. But when it comes to the whole multiplayer, this game just completely is a lot of fun to play. Now, when it comes to how this game would get a remake, which obviously it had a DS port, which I actually never got to play the DS port, unfortunately, never seemed to own it. I think I rented it one time at a friend's house and I really enjoyed it. The only thing is I really want this game to actually get an actual remake. Even though it's kind of wishful thinking since Microsoft does own Rare, but it would be something if, let's say, Nintendo one day decided to collaborate with Rare or probably with Microsoft, and they could just make like a car racer where it's very similar like Diddy Kong Racing, and just make a remake. Or if Nintendo decides to make it on their own, that's fine too. But I do remember at one point there used to be a game called Donkey Kong Racing back when it was supposed to be on the GameCube. Obviously, due to the fact that Rare got bought by Microsoft, the game actually never got to see the light of day. But it'd be interesting to see if they actually do the same thing that they did with Donkey Kong Racing as opposed to Diddy Kong Racing getting a remake. Who knows? The world is full of possibilities, and I would like to see it happen at least someday at this point. But yeah, definitely this game I would love to see get a remake. Number 2, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. I think I mentioned in part 1 when I would talk about one of the Pokemon games that Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness would be one of those games that would actually get a remake, and I'd be fine with. XD Gale of Darkness is a game that everybody in the world has wanted a remake of. And honestly, I don't blame any of those people. I actually would not mind if XD Gale of Darkness got a remake. I think it's kind of due, and even though it is on the Switch Online now since they just announced it, I still think that it needs whether a remake, a sequel, or a port. I still think that it needs to be like out there in the open for people to play. XD Gale of Darkness is a great game. It pretty much is like basically an RPG Pokemon game, but it's on the GameCube. And they did a really good job making this game. I honestly would not mind if this game actually got a sequel. Maybe perhaps like, they could do like an all-region thing, where they could do like the National Pokedex, and they could even have Shadow Lugia, or possibly another legendary that's very similar to Lugia, or who knows. I mean, Pokemon's kind of been like in decline when it comes to games, and I think XD Gale of Darkness getting a remake or a remaster or a sequel or whatever they could do with it, I think could be a great thing. Even though I still think that this game could have got a remake even before Pokemon Snap got a sequel, because to me, Pokemon Snap did not deserve a sequel. I feel like games like XD Gale of Darkness definitely deserve a remake, because honestly, it does. But honestly, I definitely think XD Gale of Darkness deserves a remake, as it is one of the best Pokemon games out there. And my number 1 favorite game to get remastered is Mario Superstar Baseball. That's right, Mario Superstar Baseball is my pick for part 2 of the games I would like to get remastered. All the games that I've listed on this entire video all deserve remakes, and I hope they really do. But Mario Superstar Baseball is kind of a game that I've actually wanted Nintendo to actually either make a port, a remaster, or hell, even just a game of its own. Because I really think that they need to make another Mario Baseball game. Even though Superstar Baseball is basically one of its kind, and it's probably one of my favorite GameCube games to play. And it's kind of funny because I'm not usually a big sports person. Even back then, I never really cared for any sport games whatsoever. I think all the sport games are stale and are kind of just repetitive, and they're all the same. But Mario Superstar Baseball, out of all the sport games, and obviously most of the Mario sports games in general, are just really good. And Superstar Baseball as a whole is probably the best one of all the games, especially for the GameCube. This game as a whole, when it comes to the character roster, the home runs, the areas that you play, the story mode, I mean, this game, I would spend hours just beating it 100%, beating all the challenges against Bowser. I mean, it just is a lot of fun, and each character has its own ability, and there's so much that you could do in this game that it's just crazy. And even for a baseball game, that's really saying something. So to be quite honest with you, I would love to have this game either get remastered or ported, or if Nintendo does a new Mario sports game or like a baseball game, I'd be down, and I would definitely buy it day one.